Hey yo guys, what's up and welcome back to Toe Tags Metal Reviews, and today we're getting our final review of Mackerel from Jinjer. Hey guys, as you know, we've spent the entire week listening to this album as much as we possibly can, and I have to say that I had a pretty enjoyable time listening to this album. But I will say as the week went on, I liked this album less and less and less, because I started to love this album more and more and more. Tricked you!
I'll admit,
Wow.
you got me there.
I got him. I got you too, admit it. Yeah, this album has a lot going for it in every aspect of the way. So, I got tons of notes. I don't even know where to start. Let's start with the ghost notes, because that's something we talked about on our first impressions. Ghost notes are all over this album and they sound amazing. But they're not just ghost notes. There's a couple things that I noticed about the ghost notes that stood out to me even more. One of them was in Retrospection, which is probably my favorite song, at least it was at certain points throughout the week, where he does the triplet ghost note. Freaking awesome. Love that style, love that, accent in there. Really cool stuff. To my knowledge, I don't think I've ever heard a triplet ghost note before. I don't know, maybe that sounds newbie or something like that, but I've listened to metal for a long freaking time, and I can't recall any song or any band that used a triplet ghost note. Maybe I just didn't notice it, I don't know. The second one I want to mention is in Homeback, which again is my favorite song in the album, and I'm gonna say that for a lot of the songs, because throughout the week, a lot of songs became my favorite song. Homeback though, what a special song this is. Special song. This has ghost notes too, but they're actually drag rough ghost notes, which is really, really cool as well. Just again, another cool style, cool flair that the drummer throws in there, just to give the song the character that I want when I'm listening to music. Lyrically, that song's really cool too. It's about war, it's about basically like you bringing war to my country, like don't destroy my country, like I'm coming back home and I want my home back. That's basically the gist of it, right? This song has a very deathcore feel to me too. There's certain elements to it, the riffing style, the tuning. I'm pretty sure this whole album, at least most of it's in drop A. Could be wrong about that, but it sounds like drop A to me. But that specifically sounds a little deathcore to me, because I'm getting Suicide Silence vibes from that song. Homeback I'm talking about still. Again, sometimes you hear connections to other music, it's hard to really pinpoint exactly why you're hearing that connection, but I'm getting it, it's there. Man, you know what? I could probably keep on talking, and I'm sure I'll get another bit to talk some more, but I'm gonna let you say some stuff.
Okay, well, throughout the week, like this album, it didn't really take long for me to really look at this album and say I'm in love with this album. It was around Sunday to Monday where I just looked at it and said, this is fucking amazing. So the entire week I'm listening to it like, this is insane.
Yeah.
And to add on to Homeback, the quiet part that happens in Homeback, not only do they transition to that really well, but it just on its own sounds so interesting. And then the way that it builds up and then comes back down and then builds back up, like it's so cool sounding.
Yeah.
Like, fuck, that's incredible.
And there's a lot of that throughout the album too, how it just kind of goes up and down and gives you a little bit of a roller coaster.
Yeah, and another thing to mention about Retrospection is that one line from the song, Childhood of Misery is Lifelong Injury, was actually in Micro, which was the EP, like straight up ripped from, it was from Dreadful Moments. And that's a really cool thing that I kind of noticed, that this album has a straight up connection with Micro, especially because the last track, which is Perennial Backwards, Line a Rep.
Yep.
Which is pretty much, it follows the same structure as Perennial, it has the same kind of stuff in it. Some of the same lyrics are reused, like they're connected together, and I listen to them back to back and it sounds really cool.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes me appreciate the original Perennial even more, because it's got a more of a grand scale to it. But honestly, like, I'd put this album on and it's like, a song would come on, like Over the Top comes on, oh, crank that up to 11. Pit of Consciousness comes on, oh, no, let's crank that up to 12.
Yeah.
Oh, Judgment and Punishment, let's crank it up to 13. Like, it just gets better and better and better and better. And like, it's all catchy. I think it's, it's funny. I rewatched our EP special where we covered Micro, and I said that, it's a bit of an acquired taste. It's kind of tough for people to whatever digest. But listening to Macro has kind of made me understand it is really technical, but it's really accessible.
It is, and the reason is it's accessible is because they have this constant up and down beat to every song. It's something you can just jive with and just groove to, and the time signature changes and all the syncopation almost doesn't matter because you can keep the same flow going for most of the album.
Yeah.
And that is, like, to me, almost perfect songwriting.
And that's amazing because they have so many technical aspects to it, but anyone can just kind of bob their head to it as well.
Yeah.
It's just as easily. Like, it fulfills the wish for everybody.
Yeah.
So good.
And speaking of that technicality and stuff like that, they do a lot of time signature changes, but surprisingly, like, counting throughout the week, most of the album is in 4/4, but it's like 4/4 and 6/8 for the majority. But then they go and they do some crazy things here and there. There's all kinds of stuff. There's 5/8. There's the end of on the top. They do 6/4, 9/4, 5/4, 9/4, 6/4, 9/4, 5/4, 9/4.
They created a pattern with it, and it sounds really cool. And it's like when you first hear it, it's like, whoa, what's that? But when you count, it's like, oh, they're so smart, and it lines up, and
it lines up perfectly, and it just sounds so sweet. But yeah, I really love that stuff, man. How it sounds, when you just hear it, it's complicated, but it fits. That to me is just awesome.
That's one thing I noticed with this album is that there's so much depth to it.
Yeah.
Like, there's just, like, you've wrote out so many notes about it. Like, even before we started recording, we talked a little bit about it and went in depth about stuff. Like, it's just, there's so much to this album. And, even songs like the second half, Pausing Death, Noah, Home Back to Prophecy, etc. Like, all of them have so many cool things about them. The Prophecy is so unique because it's so much thrashier than everything else in the album. And that just, it stands out that way. And that comes on, by that point, I probably turned it up to 20.
Yeah.
Because it just gets crazier. And that's one thing I kind of noticed with this band is that they have a really cool fusion between nu metal sound, like deathcore sound.
They're extremely contemporary,
but thrashy kind of sound.
Yeah.
Like, they do so many interesting things.
Yeah. It just feels like such a fresh sound. That's what I would say. That's what. Yeah, go ahead.
And it's funny that you mentioned last week, well, there's so many blast beats on this album, so much of that. I went back and listened to King of Everything again, which that album's ridiculously good. And I noticed more blast beats and more of that kind of stuff on that album. So it's interesting to think that we commented on that, but this album has less of that than the last one.
Yeah, I didn't listen to that album that much, so I really didn't have a good comparison to draw from. But hearing the blast beats on this album did surprise me, but I wasn't expecting it. And when I heard it, I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And you know what, when I first heard it, I think I mentioned this in the first impressions video, I thought I was hearing different styles of blast beats, but after listening to it again, I think they're all pretty standard, like hammer blast, I'm pretty sure. It's hard to tell sometimes. But a weird thing that happens specifically during the blast beats is he like oversaturates his snare really, really like a lot, and it gives it like a really, really wet sounding feel to it, which is it's something that threw me off at first, and I was kind of like, oh, that sounds like trash, but then the more the week went on, I was kind of digging that like design choice. And he does that through all the blast beats that I can remember, except the ones in the Prophecy, where it's turned up just a little bit. It's just not as wet sounding. It's a lot drier. So that almost makes that. You said the Prophecy sounds much different than the rest of this. It stands out, right? That's another thing that makes it stand out. Is the snare sound isn't as saturated on that song. At least that's what I found. So that's another cool thing. We said we were going to talk about guitar. We said we were going to focus on guitar and stuff like that. I did, and I think the riffing and everything like that is cool, and I liked the direction they went and all that stuff. But there was one song specifically, and that's Pit of Consciousness, which they just dropped a video for, which we reacted to, so go check that out. But the guitar riffs in that song, they have this like spiraling kind of sound that always makes it's like a constant downward feeling of the song, and the way like it evokes this melancholic vibe that is like partnered with the lyrics, and the whole like the essence of the entire song just comes together, and I feel like the guitar riff in that song really ties it all together, because if you listen to it, it's like really like a spiraling down. That's what I picture when listening to that riff. It's the best riff on the album in my opinion.
And on that song, they do a really small specific thing that I noticed, but when I noticed it, it kept blowing my mind. In the first verse, they play the riff, and then they just hit like quarter notes, da 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 da. And they do that only in like the first verse. When they go to the second verse, they do something different. But that first part just feels so thick.
Yeah.
And I love it. And when I first noticed that, I'm like, what the fuck is that? That's so cool. And that's such a small thing too. Like, albums like these have so much depth, so many small things that just jump out at you like that.
Yeah. And
No.
the thing is, sorry to add thing, because that's in that song, but there's other songs where they do a little thing at one part of the song that they don't do in any other part of the song, and Over the Top is another example because there's a little guitar like that leads into the first chorus. It's just a
Yeah,
little
that
guitar
wasn't there in the second
and
one.
it doesn't happen in the second chorus, or it doesn't happen for the rest of the song. It might happen during parts of the song, but never at that part again.
Yeah, it's
And
unique
it's
that
just
way.
it's just awesome because it just makes that little part special.
So cool. And you know, it's hard to pick a favorite song in this album.
Yeah.
Now, when we first, like when we did our first impressions, you know, we were listening to it around like Saturday. I listened to On the Top and I'm like, this is a perfect song.
Yeah.
Straight up.
Yep.
But then I'm like, well, wait a minute. Then I noticed that thing in Pit of Consciousness. I'm like, this song's amazing. And then I was listening to Judgment and Punishment more, and I'm like, what the hell? All these songs are sick.
Yeah.
Like it just kept going like fireworks throughout the entire week. But with that being said, let's rate this out. So
You
what-
first, me first.
It's up to you. I don't really care.
I will go first. I will say nothing more, because nothing more needs to be said. This album gets my toe tag. Yeah, it's phenomenal. This is a masterpiece. It's an excellent piece of work. Vocally, rhythmically, melodically, lyrically. This is a home run.
Well, I mean, I can't add anything else other than my own toe tag because this album is insane.
Yeah.
Like, it blew both of our minds throughout the week, and I'm glad that Jinjer has a place on this list because quickly, like with this album and checking out the last one, like this has become one of my favorite bands in general. Like these guys are just so incredibly talented and their music is so unique
Yeah.
and they do so much. Like this album's really opened my eyes to how amazing this band is. So it's just, wow.
Well, there you have it, guys. 2 toe tags. Make sure you guys leave a comment below and let us know what you guys think. If you guys agree with us, if you guys noticed anything cool about certain songs, let us know in the comments below. So we'd like to check those things out if we didn't notice them ourselves. But that's it for this video. So like it if you liked it. Subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. I'm Vile Self.
I'm TV Fish.
We'll see you guys on the next one.